Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Famiboards Discussion Club, a podcast formed by the Famiboards community. Today, we'll be discussing just what the heck is going on with the video game industry right now. If you would like to get on this discussion as well, please be sure to swing by this podcast companion thread on Famiboards.com. I'm WestEgg, and I'm once again joined by Irene.
Hello.
And VolcanicDynamo.
Wow, gang, what a year in gaming, huh?
It's only February.
February.
All right. So before we kind of get into the meat of this discussion, which will be obvious from the title and the thumbnail and whatnot and what I just said, I think we'll start a little bit lighter. So just kind of want to go around, ask what we've been playing, how we've been liking it.
I've been playing a lot, actually. I've had my time split between my Switch and my new Retroid Pocket 4 Pro. So I've been trying to get into some things here and there. Last weekend, on my Retroid, I've been playing Sonic fan game remakes. So last week I played the remake of Sonic, the 16-bit Sonic Triple Trouble, and now I've been playing remakes of Sonic 1 and 2 for Sega Master System, which both of those are very different than the Genesis counterparts. So it's interesting to see a stab at a remake. The one I would actually just straight up recommend if you like Sonic, though, is the Triple Trouble 16-bit, which is also on PC. Fantastic remake. Really makes it feel like the Genesis games as opposed to just a Game Gear game. And on my Switch, I've done like 2 worlds of the Mario vs. Donkey Kong remake last night. I've been playing it co-op with my partner.
Nice.
I played like an hour and a half or so of Arzette, the Jewel of Faramore, which has been wild so far, but I've really been enjoying it. And I've been playing a game that you just got into recently. We've been playing Splatoon 3 because this weekend was the Friday versus Saturday versus Sunday Splatfest.
What team were you?
Saturday. All the way.
Okay.
Yeah, Saturday. The objectively correct choice, even though Sunday is currently winning right now, which is strange because it's weird to see a team that just straight up doesn't exist and that I haven't run into in a single game be the winners. But look, that's what happens when you have the objectively correct choice as Team Saturday. I don't make up the rules.
There's an old Calvin and Hobbes comic where Calvin's like, I can never truly enjoy Sunday because it feels like the day before your execution. It's a little dark, but yeah, I'm also Team Saturday.
Yeah. It's the day where you're happy on Saturday because you have slept in and can wake up whenever you want, and you go through the entirety of Saturday knowing that the day afterwards you can also sleep in. So
Yes.
So Friday is like the day after work, so you still have work, and Sunday is the day before work. So Saturday is this like oasis surrounded between 2 swaths of free time. That is what I enjoy. And Saturdays is just like, you can technically do it on Sundays too, but Saturdays is just like you can just wake up and breathe out, and if you are like me who doesn't have an ideal work situation, and you feel that warm, enlightening sense of freedom.
So speaking of, what have you been playing lately?
Yes, I am super late to the party to Splatoon 3, and I am loving it so much, and I can't wait for Side Order, because the story is that I played, I've never ever touched a game with roguelite design before. Then I got a PS5 with Last of Us Part 2 No Return, which has this kind of like roguelite design to it. You do runs are randomized, and when you die, you start from the very beginning. And I played it, and it's freaking incredible. And I just like, it was like this new horizon of design that opened up to me. It was like, hey, this roguelite thing is pretty cool. And then the Side Order overview trailer dropped, and I looked at it and I was like, this looks really fun. This looks really, really cool. And there was this synergy, because then the sale came and Splatoon 3 was on sale. And I am like, I'm jumping onto this. And I jumped on it. And this morning, I am telling you, I've been playing match after match after match. And I have, because when I played Splatoon 1 and 2, I actually never switched weapons. I always played with the splatter shot because I was still having fun. But now I got the I forget the weapon names. The long range kind of sniper-ish weapon. Yeah, it's a long range weapon.
The chargers.
And thank you. The chargers. Because the thing is, back in the late 90s and early 2000s, back when I was a kid, I played Counter-Strike with my brothers, and I was always the sniper. I always had the AVP and picked everyone off from a distance. Now I can get to be a sniper in Splatoon, and that's super fun.
Nice. I never, I didn't play through the Splatfest this weekend so far, but I've always favored the Splishomatic as my weapon. I just really like the kind of up-close damage with it.
What kind of weapon is that now again?
It's I'm trying to think of the categories. It is just like a handheld gun. I don't remember what those are specifically called, but it has high damage up close, but it still has decent range.
Yeah, it's like a shoot. It is a shooter, but it has like more of a spread shot to it.
It's good for getting behind people and just blowing them away.
That sounds very stealthy, in a very funny way.
Yeah, I like it. So I didn't get in on the Splatfest this weekend. I've kind of been splitting time between Mario versus Donkey Kong. I'm on I just finished up the third world. I'm not sure how long it is. And then, I've also been playing Arset, which is a great game so far. I might have more to say about that in the near future. But aside from that, I haven't been playing too much else. I was on a bit of a City Skylines kick, but kind of fell out of that. I'll go ahead and get us into the meat of the discussion today, which has been quite a bit on the news lately, especially in regards to video game.
It has been one hell of a week, to say the least.
It's been a hell of a year so far.
Yeah, even a year.
So what kind of made this particularly relevant this week is rumors started coming out about Xbox was going to put certain of their games on other platforms. Like, I believe different podcasts had come out there talking about it. They were saying they'd heard Sea of Thieves might be coming to other platforms, Hi-Fi Rush, and then like the rumors started kind of accelerating, and they're like, no, it might be Starfield, it might be Indiana Jones, it might be all of Xbox like coming. So I think kind of in a panic, Phil put out a tweet which is like, hey everyone, calm down, we'll talk about it next week on the Xbox podcast. And I think everyone was like, oh wow, that was a tweet from Phil Spencer, like everyone panic, like he's going to confirm it all and more. And then they kind of had the podcast and they were like, yeah, we're considering doing 4 games multiplat, and that was it. It was a bit of an anticlimax.
Yeah, I still don't know why the contents of that podcast weren't just like a quick tweet or an email or some very, very quick press release. Because I feel like you could have condensed those 20 minutes into just that, told the exact same information, and cut off the rumor mill very quickly instead of giving it a week to sort of fester and build up to the point where people were going just wild with it.
I have my own thoughts on why they did it, and I do think the situation was fairly mismanaged, but something Phil said during the podcast, I said, like, when we were originally planning this, we were going to head off with news about Activision. So I think they had been planning this regardless of, like, the recent rumors about multiplat releases, but it was supposed to, first and foremost, be, like, an announcement of, hey, we're going to start the process of bringing Activision games into Game Pass, because that is fairly big news. And then, like, they kind of had to quickly switch strategy once all of these rumors came out, and so that kind of became the priority. But it looked very reactionary as a result. Like, I think this was probably always scheduled to be this week, but the shift in focus made it look like they kind of, like, panicked and changed things, which they did, but I think it was just an adjustment of plans, not like a wholesale, we need to get something out there.
And I think, like I said, I think even if they just led with a very quick message to break the ice about some of the stuff, they probably could have had their cake and ate it too, where they could have had a podcast that focused on, Activision Blizzard games are coming to Game Pass. Diablo 4 is coming out in March, and that could have been great. But they just they didn't really manage the situation very well. They didn't really quell the rumors when they should have, and set up expectation. And the thing is, unlike a Nintendo, where they'll just be quiet about something, they won't say anything, and we'll get to them later. Xbox tries to say something for light damage control, makes it worse, then has a podcast that they had to slightly rejiggle to be actual damage control, and it just ends up confusing a lot of people in probably the worst way possible.
Yeah, and Xbox has kind of like the impression I get from the Xbox brand as a whole is that they build a lot of the brand on communication a lot. I know you can point to, I mean, people talk about Phil Spencer a lot, that, he's like this approachable company guy that seems to be a humble guy that's happy to be part of the table. And then you can also have opinions about those opinions being like a bit of a cult of personality around Phil. And that's kind of like being in tune with your consumers of your brand, and having that sort of like, okay, we are in a situation where we have active communication with consumers of our brand. So then when things happen where rumors start to swirl, you kind of are forced to have active communication with the consumers of your brand, because then when something like this happens, it's like you're like, okay, we have to respond in some way. We can't just hide or like be secretive about it, because that's not how we roll. We have built a brand on active communication between us and the fans, not just because of Phil being an like approachable public persona and face of the company. But as a whole, I get the impression that Xbox pride themselves on being a very communicative brand. Then when something like this happens, I think they felt a lot of pressure from consumers of their brand, or from the gaming community at large, that, okay, things are happening, rumors are swirling, where they sort of had to make a decision on the fly, that, okay, what are we doing? Is this going to be a JPEG? Is this going to be a tweet? And when they did the decision to make this bake it into a sort of podcast episode, then they gave the gaming community additional time to sort of spiral into all of these wild rumors. And now it feels like now they're in this position where a lot of the discourse right now is that, it was a bit of a nothing burger. It was only things going multi-platform, and the rumors weren't really true, or the gossip weren't really like going to be true. From my perspective, I would say that, yeah, that was probably not the right decision, but I understand that they took this decision because they felt like they were put in a spot where they're like, okay, we're a communicative brand, we have to make a decision about how we're going to communicate this to our fan base.
Yeah, they kind of brought the whole crew for the podcast. I don't know if either of you watched it, like the live version, but they had Phil Spencer, they had Sarah Bond, and they had Matt Booty. That's basically like everyone big in like the leadership of Microsoft gaming. So that did just seem to be like such a presence for that. And they did not say the 4 games that are going to be coming to other platforms. But from what online speculation has gathered, it almost certainly seems to be Sea of Thieves, Hi-Fi Rush, Pentiment, and Grounded. And none of those, aside from maybe Sea of Thieves, which is a big games as a service game, kind of Grounded as well, like none of those are huge releases. So it's not like they're putting Halo out. It's not like they're putting even Gears of War, which is like rumored. So I kind of think this isn't even that significant a change of a strategy. I don't know if either of you would disagree. Like Good Vibes Gaming recently put out a video which is like 30 times Microsoft has put out games on other consoles since the founding of Xbox, and it was just kind of interesting to see that.
Yeah, and I saw part of that podcast before immediately switching to the transcript that they posted 10 minutes after the podcast started. That's certainly how they're presenting this as, this isn't a change in strategy. It's the same old. And I don't really disagree with that. And yeah, games that have been made by the Xbox or its subsidiaries, or games that have been or and all that kind of stuff definitely have been on other platforms. It isn't really like that weird in and of itself. There is language that in some response that Phil has given in some place that suggests that, just the general importance of exclusives in general is something that's sort of like less for them. And I think that might be like the bigger deal going forward, because the question is not if this particular, for me, it's not if this particular move is a change in strategy, but how is something like this and their future actions going to inform what they choose to do? Because right now their big thing is that they want to be they want to put their games everywhere. They want to be a service. They want to really push Game Pass, even if they are still working on current gen hardware. They're still working on next gen hardware. They're still doing that. Microsoft is a software company. They're a service company, and that's what they want to push. So
I think Microsoft views exclusives differently than, say, Sony does, because I think Sony has this idea of, we have our systems, you can only get our like very prestigious games on our system. It's like a brand strengthening like synergy to it, whereas Microsoft use their exclusives as play them for free on Game Pass, or not for free, but for the subscription price. And then after a year when the hype has diminished or whatever, like, it doesn't matter to have that exclusive anymore. You might as well continue to make money off of it by putting it on something. I think that's kind of the idea behind Hi-Fi Rush. Like they've gotten the press and made the excitement out of Hi-Fi Rush they're going to get out of it. Might as well have another wave of that by putting it on other systems.
I think you're right on the money when you're comparing it to Sony, because Sony has always been like the prestige brand, right? They have the most expensive console, the most like some of the most I don't really know how to word it. But huge production value AAA exclusives, and they really using it as brand building to put out these exclusives only on our system, which is the most expensive system. And Microsoft has this completely different approach where they're like, hey, here's our exclusives if that are on our platform, and seems to treat them in a way that it's like comparatively kind of like just handing them out to Game Pass subscribers, as opposed to the standalone $70 high production value experiences, even if Microsoft exclusive absolutely can have also the same level of production values. They are tied to the service in a way that is a different kind of brand building than PlayStation does it. So they approach exclusives in a different way. So I think when you have a sort of like more preconceived notion of, okay, exclusives are exclusives, but they are sort of like stretching the definition of, but exclusives can still exist on other platforms. They're technically not exclusives anymore, but it's still the same approach of, hey, we are here to, we're pushing the subscription, and we're pushing our brand that is not exclusive to the Xbox series of consoles necessarily. So I don't think this is a out of the blue decision that they have made. I sort of when he said that they were going to release it to other platforms, if you put it into the perspective of how they're pushing and approaching Game Pass as a service, I think it's sort of like, it didn't really caught me by surprise, because I was like, this is not completely out of the blue when you put it in context with their approach to gaming as a whole, I guess.
Okay, so I want to ask one question, just kind of relating to Xbox overall. Like, on a scale of like 1 to 10, how concerned are you for the future of Xbox?
I feel like I'm gonna say like a 6 or a 7.
Okay.
Not because I think they're gonna suddenly drop out of the console war, or they're gonna do anything like that, but they're not doing so hot, right? Hardware sales have been pretty sluggish. There was steep discounting in the holidays, but like we don't really have really strong numbers on there. Game Pass is at 34 million subscribers. That's up from the 25 million, but they haven't been hitting their targets. And this number also includes Game Pass Core subscribers. So anyone who is subscribed, who is on Xbox Live Gold, and when they changed that to Xbox Game Pass Core, so that's not really getting new subscribers for Game Pass. That's just existing subscribers to Xbox Live who now are in this sort of core setup. So their growth isn't good, and obviously, you know, growth isn't everything, though that certainly is one of Xbox's biggest goals right now. But then we have the other thing. Only a few first-party titles are going third-party. That's great. But at the moment, because they're sort of Xbox and PC, that's sort of what they usually tend to tie for their releases, you know. Speaking for myself, it's like it was very easy to say, okay, I'll just play some. If I wanted to play some of these games, I'll just buy them on the PC, or I'll do PC Game Pass even if I really wanted to. Now, obviously, building a PC is going to be a lot more expensive than buying a game console, so obviously that's sort of the big thing. But you're telling me I can get Sea of Thieves or Hi-Fi Rush on my PlayStation 5, or even my Nintendo Switch for maybe a couple of these. My question then becomes, especially if this is the strategy that they continue with, why get an Xbox? Why get an Xbox? I mean, yeah, if you're going to give me your software like a year or two later on another platform, a convenient platform, you know, why buy into your ecosystem? And if this ends up proving popular, this is the direction they go in, yeah, they can keep making hardware, but is it going to sell? Who is it going to appeal to necessarily?
So if I were to rate my concern, I would say it's a 5. Because you did make a lot of good points, but I think the question you had just asked, why buy an Xbox? I think Microsoft wants people to be thinking that question as well, but bigger. They want to be thinking, why buy a console at all? Like, I think in the future, I think they are keeping an eye on the future. They're like, we're expanding our presence on PC. We are literally the leaders in cloud technology and all of that. Like, we are a multi-trillion-dollar company. We will outlast all of these other companies without even trying. Like, we can run our business at a loss until it becomes advantageous to, you know, turn the tables around. Like, obviously Xbox needs to make money, but I think they have more of an eye on the future, and even though they've already confirmed they're working on next generation hardware, I think they're looking forward to a hardware agnostic future in general. But part of that is, like, Xbox has made itself too big. They've bought themselves too much into the industry to ever go down, to ever, like, sink and, like, just run away from video games. Like, they were that before they bought Activision. Now they're definitely that. So even if there was a hypothetical future where they just called it quits on that, Xbox will survive. It will be like a service comparable to Steam. It will be the largest third-party publisher. Like, I'm not concerned with Xbox. Like, I think the only reason to be concerned with Xbox is if you are just married to the idea of their physical hardware.
I would rate it like a 5 or a 6 as well. I think Volcanic took a lot of words out of my mouth, and I think if there is any point of concern for me is that the generosity of Game Pass might become a negative in the long run. With, like, yes, 34 million subscribers is a lot of subscribers, but then you start to think of, okay, we are having this amazing, because in some ways Game Pass is incredible, and in some way Game Pass is almost like too good to be true, where it becomes like, okay, they're putting all of these games on Game Pass, and it's like, what if Game Pass becomes even more generous? They're putting even more exclusives they want on Game Pass, and it makes me wonder, like, how many, like, actual physical copies of Starfield was sold, and you starting to think about, okay, what was their forecast for actual physical copies of Starfield or like digital copies of Starfield? Because then you start to think about, what if they want to expand on cloud technology and expand on like PC Game Pass, for example. I don't know, have hard data on PC Game Pass versus Xbox Game Pass, but if I, who have like a decent PC rig, can get like at least an equal amount of games that are on Xbox now on PC Game Pass, then it becomes the question of why buy an Xbox. And if they want to put the Xbox Game Pass even more out there, then the question of why getting an Xbox becomes like even more tangible. And then it starts to bleed into the exclusivity question about why buy first-party games at full price if they are all going to be day one on Game Pass. So this like deal of like, oh, here's $10 an hour for all, $10 a month for all of these games, and if they become more and more games on day one and expand Game Pass more and more, it's like, how is the trajectory gonna be in the long run? And how is the sort of profitability and sustainability on Game Pass gonna be in the more run if they expand on it more and more? That's kind of like on my head when it comes to concerns and stuff.
So obviously we're kind of taking a critical look at Xbox, and it seems like maybe the grass is greener over at PlayStation, but PlayStation themselves have put out some interesting news this week. It's let's see. So I know that their recent financial report came out. They have cut their forecast for the fiscal year from 25 million sold to 21 million, so it looks like they're going to fall about 4 million short of that. But kind of notably, it also puts the PS5 behind the PS4 as far as its trajectory goes. And even the president of Sony said that the PlayStation's entering the latter half of its life cycle. Like, that alone is just like a what statement? If I hope I'm not alone on that, but it's just like, this generation just started, didn't it?
Oh, we kind of are on year 4, I guess. These were consoles that were released in 2020, and now it's and now we're in 2024. So, I mean, it's really tricky because like we've gotten some really long generations. So saying, oh, we're in the 4th year and we've had like 2 7-year generations in a row, saying, oh, we're halfway through, on the surface kind of makes sense, but game development has like extended so long, especially for the big AAA games that a company like Sony pushes a lot. So it's gonna feel really, really short. I'll tell you, even though I have a PlayStation 5, there's not many games I've specifically tried on PS5, or lots of PS5 exclusives, you know? Especially, not even counting exclusives that were once exclusive but then got ports. But yeah, it feels super, super short. And this is definitely a time where if this were like a 10-year generation, honestly, that'd be totally fine because of things. But yeah, they really, you know, with the targets they're not reaching, and even some games that aren't quite pushing the hardware, there's or not quite pushing the hardware, but kind of like going above what the hardware can provide. There's like rumors of like a PS5 Pro coming out this holiday, isn't there?
Yeah.
Or something like that?
Yeah, there is.
So, yeah, there's definitely that feeling that of this wait already. What also doesn't help is the massive cross-gen period. Like, we're still getting PS4 games. So obviously there's still a lot of big PS5 games. PS5 is going to be the best place to play a lot of the PlayStation games, but you know, unless you really wanted Ratchet and Clank or Spider-Man or the upcoming Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
So,
you know,
I was curious, so I looked this up. Without looking it up, how many exclusive games do you think are currently on the PS5, as far as games that do not release aren't released anywhere else?
I know the answer because I looked this up a little bit, so I'm going to be quiet about this one.
I don't know, 7?
More than that, but, well...
10?
I guess that depends on your definition, because I think it might be 7 if you disregard the remakes and ports.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah, I counted 13, but there are 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I'm counting already 5, 6 if you count Demon Souls remakes reports. So yeah, it's not a lot either way.
Yeah, and like I know at least I'm looking at the list right now. I know at least I think at 1 or 2 of these are also specifically PSV are all specifically PlayStation VR 2 games. So if you want to play those, so really, unless you have the $600 headset, there's only 11 games. Not and then you take out like the ports, and then it's like, oh wow, that's it's not a lot. Let's also talk about how on this list there are a lot of games that are listed here that also haven't released yet. Rise of the Ronin isn't coming out until March. Wolverine isn't coming out. Is announced but hasn't come out yet. I'll let Rebirth pass because it's coming out in a few months. So really, it's 11 games minus two VR games. So you have 9. And yeah, to be fair, there were a couple of games that started off as exclusives, but then got ported to PC. Like Ratchet and Clank and stuff like that. But this is a really, really low number of reasons to specifically buy a PS5. I mean, I guess if I will say something over the Xbox, there is sort of that convenience factor of just getting a system and just being able to play the games. But even then,
you know what especially doesn't make it sound good to buy a PS5 like right now or immediately? They also confirmed no major first-party titles are coming until at least March 2025.
Ouch.
Now, they're probably going to be putting out maybe some smaller games, some remakes, etc. But you're not going to have a God of War. You're not going to have a Horizon. You're probably not going to have another Ratchet. You're not going to have another Spider-Man. Like, the big system sellers, they're just not going to be there. So it's like, if you haven't bought one yet, unless you're specifically looking forward to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, like, I don't see anything that would convince me that I need a PS5.
Maybe you really, really want Rise of the Ronin, Team Ninja's Sony Interactive published game. That's first party, right?
And like, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not here to just like poke fun at Sony or whatever for this, but I'm someone that needs to be convinced to buy a console. Like, when I bought a 360, I got it for Mass Effect. When I bought an Xbox One, it was for Monster Hunter World. And the reason why I chose the Xbox system over the PlayStation system was honestly because of Game Pass, because that kind of spoke to me. But like, neither of these systems yet have been like, hey, you need this. Like, you need to spend $500 on a console to get this. And I think that's true for a lot of people. I think sales are going to be down for both systems next year.
Yeah. You know what doesn't help that even further? The fact that prices aren't going down on these systems. In fact, in many parts of the world, they've gone up because of inflation and hardware prices. And what's a great way to convince you to buy a system? It's not raising the price by 50 euros, for example. It'd be like, okay, here you go. Here's your PlayStation. Get our new game. You like Silent Hill, right? That's one of our exclusives. You like that, right?
So kind of related to that, so 2 of the regions where they did raise the price of the PS5, Japan and the UK, both had news this week that they've gone into recession. So, like, money is tight everywhere.
Yeah, it's like, what do? I mean, you could if you like. It's almost like it's like, and we'll sort of talk about this later, but like a lot of the sort of on the highest end, the sort of big stuff, it's like it's kind of unsustainable. Like what's gonna give, Yeah. So it's definitely not great. Oh, I totally forgot of this. I should probably mention this. I do know that with the PS5 at this point, they had released the PS4 Pro. Mm-hmm. By this time, and they also released the slim PS4. So you had a cheaper entry into the market for those who wanted to sort of get in, and you had the upgraded Pro model, which sure led to at least a few people double dipping, and those were still only $300, $400.
Now, they did release the Slim for the PS5. It's just not cheaper.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, that's why a lot of people want to get like the Slim versions of the units. Oh, they want a cheaper entry point into the system. We don't have that with the new models. If anything, hold on, what's the price of the PS5 Slim right now? The PS5 Slim, the discless version, $430. That's more expensive than the discless PS5. So great. You gotta pay more if you want the cheaper option, supposedly.
Yeah. All right. So we do have a community question from Meatbag regarding PlayStation. Which reads: a silver lining I see with Sony being unable to release a major existing franchise title for the next fiscal year is that they might rediscover the benefit of having smaller scale first-party projects, which might be cool franchise revivals. Which Sony IP games would you like to see return? And they said they'd be elated for modern takes on Ape Escape and Patapon.
I agree, Meatbag. I'd love to see games like Ape Escape and Patapon return. Too bad Sony killed off Japan's studio.
Gravity Rush hurts.
Yes.
Ouch.
So.
I might buy a PS5 for Gravity Rush, Sony. Like, come on.
Yeah, there you have your killer app for WestEgg. Go.
Yeah.
But don't worry. We can't make a new Gravity Rush game, but we can develop the Gravity Rush movie. Go watch it.
Oh yeah, we can.
So we'll make a movie for this franchise, but we're not making this game anymore. Sorry. Sorry.
Surely they have to have like a remaster or something to release along with that movie. Like that would just be bizarre if they didn't.
Gravity Rush remastered.
Remastered
For The Last of Us.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not Uncharted territory. But
I would love to see
like,
Loco Roco as well.
Oh yeah.
Give me Parappa the Rapper. Give me like a new one of those.
Yeah. But yeah, honestly, just please bring back Ape Escape. I'm begging you. I will be on my hands and knees for a brand new Ape Escape game. I don't care that camera control is now predominantly handled by the right stick, and thus the left stick, right stick control scheme of the original games might be seen as a little weird. I am beyond that. It is not a problem for me. Just bring back my funky little monkeys and apes, please. I want to catch them all.
Everyone loves monkeys. It's the secret to Donkey Kong.
Yeah. Also, I'll take another Astro game. I'll take whatever Team Asobi's working on. It's been 4 years since it's been like a while since Astro's Playroom. I would love give me one of those and I'll be set. If it's a VR exclusive, it might be a little less set because that VR headset is very expensive, and the first PlayStation VR headset kind of broke my glasses. So my heart has a slight personal vendetta against that. But no, honestly, I really enjoyed Astro's Playroom. It might be my favorite PS5 exclusive right now. So I would love another full-length Astro game.
Is Sackboy first party, or was it like a third party that worked with Sony?
Sackboy was it's a first party franchise, but they had a third party company work on Sackboy's Big Adventure.
And do you think like Astrobot has kind of just taken his place as like the cutesy mascot for Sony?
Kind of. I mean, if they kept making games in the vein of the original Three Little Big Planets, which I don't know if they're going to do that because who knows what Media Molecule's currently doing right now. They didn't even really do the second one because the third one because they were working on Dreams, let alone Sackboy's Big Adventure, the Sackboy game. Like in a 3D space, I think Astrobot kind of like eats Sackboy's lunch. Though maybe that's just because I found Astro's Playroom more fun than the Sackboy game. But I think there could be room for like both of them to like coexist if they really wanted to. Especially again if you do the whole 2D platforming of the original Little Big Planets. Or, I mean, hell, even embrace the idea of Astro being more open, and and Sackboy being the more Mario 3D World style linear platformer. There is room for both, but I don't know. I have no idea what their plans will be for that one.
All right, so let's just kind of take a little broader scope of what's going on, not platform specific. We recently had two big games that had been anticipated for a while, seen significant delays. Talking specifically about Skull and Bones and Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League. So those were in development forever, and they finally came out, and they seem to have just fallen flat on their face. Like, I don't know if either of you were interested in either of those games, so I don't know if you have experience with them. But it seems like they've already come and went, if I'm not mistaken.
I totally forgot that Skull and Bones even came out. They've been working on that game for like how long?
11 years, I think.
11 years. Yeah, all that development time for it to come out with like nobody talking about it. Suicide Squad having its terrible like previews before just coming out being like, yeah, it's kind of fine. It's just kind of okay. Not to mention just some of the very interesting directions they took with some of the story. From what I've heard, again, I'm not really interested in either game personally, but I can't really say I'm surprised. Speaking of another game that kind of just came out and is being seen, that I don't hear like anyone really talking about, but maybe I'm just missing the conversation. But is there some Foam Stars?
Yeah. That I didn't know it had come out.
Yeah, it came out just now. I'm looking up some of the reception. IGN 6 out of 10. Not exactly very going on Metacritic. Oh, it has a 59 on that's actually worse than I was expecting. Did
they release Foam Stars on a Splatfest weekend?
They released it like 2 weeks. They released.
Oh, okay.
It was 2 weeks ago.
I was gonna say I'd give them props for guts for that.
But that's another one that's like, yeah, that's probably gonna be dead within like a year or two. They're expecting people to pay $30 for that game. I think the price is $30 when it's not on like PS Plus.
Was it a games as a service game, or was it just a discrete release?
I think it's supposed to be it's a games as a service. They have like excuse me. There's like seasons and stuff.
Okay. Yeah, it's free. It's also free on PS Plus.
Okay, so it's kind of like Splatoon, where it receives updates, but they're not necessarily like microtransaction heavy.
Yeah, but it does have skins and stuff.
Oh no, it's very.
Oh, it does. Yeah. Okay, never mind.
Let's see. I know that it's been sort of infamous with some of like the costume packs. Like I've seen some of the costume packs go up for $45.
Oh yeah.
Oh no.
But
no.
I mean, from within the game, it's like how like. Yeah, like I don't understand like bundles for it, and it's just like I'll send you folks a screenshot so you can look for yourself on your own time. But
oh dang.
Yeah, it's that
is awful.
Very not good.
I hate this. I okay. All right, so the thing is, you have like these three big like releases that are pushing a games as a service model falling flat, and this is kind of meant to be what picks up the slack for diminishing returns on physical hardware sales and physical copy sales, and even like maybe shrinking subscription service revenue. And so it's kind of just frankly not, and everyone's still kind of really heavily invested in live service. They see the Fortnite money, they hear the siren song of it, and they want it. And I think what's being realized is that Fortnite doesn't succeed because it's a live service game. It succeeds because it's Fortnite. Like,
exactly.
I think it's this. Yeah, I think it's the same lesson that all of the streaming services are learning about Netflix. That they aren't going to be the next Netflix. Only Netflix is currently Netflix.
Yeah, exactly. And what gets me about all of this is that the whole diminishing return and stuff. I sometimes every 3 or 4 years I'm reminded about that something that will never die out in games is just games that are just games. Here's $60 and here is your 40-hour adventure. Have fun. Like, I think that's key behind a lot of like Nintendo success, that they have a lot of their first party games, and a lot of their first party games are, here's your $60. Oh, thank you. Here's your 40 either your 40-hour adventure or your multiplayer game or your super expansive fighting game with an expansive roster, and so on and so forth. And I remember, even you take it further back when PS4 came out. And before that, there was this talk about, okay, console generations might be over, or consoles might be over because mobile gaming was taking over. And will people even be in? There was like this really doomy atmosphere, but will people really be interested in traditional gaming anymore when mobile is the future? Mobile is going to take over. Then the PS4 releases, and I was like, no, people are still interested in consoles. People are still interested in $50 games or $60 games where you get your complete package game. And then there was this talk about, okay, the future of consoles is going to be iterative. We're going to get your PS5 Pro, PS4 Pro, and then your PS4 Pro 2, and these kind of like phone-like continuous iterations. But then Sony announced the PS5. I released the PS5, and the PS5 started to sell, and it was this like, no, people are still as interested in traditional console gaming and still interested in your, here's your $60 off, thank you, here's your adventure. And of course, there have been alternative models like Game Pass that has shaken things up significantly. And I think that's just never gonna die out, and it makes me think that maybe all of this is a sort of sign that things that are not here's your $60, here's your adventure, are like not exactly fads or anything, but it comes down to the game at the very, very bottom of all of this, like live service and microtransaction and pay to win and free to play. At the bottom of this is, if you have your game that is a good game, then it's gonna carry everything else. And just as you said, like Fortnite is succeeding because it's Fortnite. I think that a lot of live service games are not necessarily failing because they're live service games. They're failing because they're failing as games. So I think that a lot of people are chasing the live service trend or live service model so hard and so like eagerly that they're sort of missing the whole idea or the whole concept or the whole truth that at the bottom of everything you do, you need to have your solid foundation for a game, because all across gaming, it has always been about the games. And if you prioritize the live service before the game, instead of the game before the live service, then I think you're gonna see diminishing returns, because that is how things are gonna be. It's always gonna be about the games first and foremost.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. All right, so I do want to. We should mention. We don't necessarily need to go too deep into this, but we definitely need to make note. Layoffs have been pretty bad this year already. 2023 had already set the record for most layoffs in the industry. And then on January 25th, Daniel Ahmed on Twitter noted that there's been 5,900 layoffs as of then, which was 60% of 2023's total by January 25th.
Ouch.
And we've had more since then. We've had a lot of stories about the Embracer Group laying off like full studios and stuff. There's been further redundancy elimination with the Activision Microsoft merger. It's just kind of a bleak time to be in the industry.
It's further proof that the endless pursuit of consolidation and growth is only really there to benefit the higher ups and does not benefit anyone else. It doesn't benefit players of games. It doesn't benefit the workers of games. A lot of this is very, very similar to other things going on in tech, big tech, and other creative industries, from the rising prevalence of generative AI as another example. You know, a lot of it is very simply a lot of it is a labor issue, and it's a capital issue. I'm actually going to plug a video by someone who is way more eloquent than me, called "The Video Game Industry Is Not Collapsing: A Lore Explains" by Moon Channel. It's an hour-long video, but it's very well divided up with timestamps, so doesn't feel that long. But to briefly summarize, he notes that the things going on in the industry, this is from like November of last year, but it still applies now. A lot of it is very similar to what's going on just in big tech, very cynical, reactionary big business decisions. And he sort of explores where a lot of those decisions have come from and where they do. And again, a lot of it has come down to, the way the system of capitalism works, where it's more hey, we'll scale up, we'll try to do growth, and when we don't quite get those numbers, we're not going to cut money off from our top. We're not going to allow ourselves to take a loss. We're going to cut workers to say that we got a bigger profit, and that ends up really hurting, everything else in the industry besides those higher-ups, besides the shareholders. So yeah, if you ever have a chance, definitely watch that video. It's very clear and very illuminating in terms of how clearly it just breaks down, like saying, and sort of reminds you, no, you're not going wild. No, the industry isn't collapsing, but things are getting very ridiculous, and it's not good.
So yeah, I actually have seen that video. I follow Moon Channel's works pretty closely. He puts out a lot of good content. But yeah, that is a good point, just about how video games have fallen into the business tech cycle, or the tech business cycle. All right, so we do have a question from Giro, which asks, how is all of this going to affect Dragon Quest, and how will it affect Tekken X Street Fighter? I kind of do wonder what is going on with Dragon Quest right now. Like, wasn't 12 announced forever ago?
Yeah, it was.
I'll be there when it comes out. I like Dragon Quest, but
maybe
I don't know.
Maybe it'll come out. Maybe it'll be like early in a Switch 2's launch cycle. I don't think they're not gonna do a Switch or Switch 2 version, because of look at how well 11 did on Switch. So, and not to mention the identity of Dragon Quest being very tied to Nintendo lately.
Mm-hmm. I'm fairly certain it's going to be a Switch 2 game.
I mean, unless it comes out literally this year as a surprise, there's no way.
And then I can't speak to Tekken X Street Fighter.
That game is dead, will forever be dead, and will never come out, and you will just have to accept that.
I think this was a kind of a tongue-in-cheek question anyway. But there was a follow-up on that, which was asking, so you're the emperor or empress of PlayStation, and you have to make sure people are happy, you have a whole lot of money next fiscal year without a major first-party release. What do you do in addition to their existing strategies? And whatever you say, it's your will be done 100%.
There's a huge shortcut to make people happy, and that is cutting the price of the PS5 by half, but I'm not sure how feasible that would be if you want to pair it with making a whole lot of money. So that's a conundrum.
Part of the PlayStation financials showed that their revenue is actually they're making good revenue, but their profit margins on PlayStation hardware is actually pretty terrible, which is probably why we haven't gotten a price cut. In fact, why we've gotten price increases.
What would I do? You go first, West.
I mean, we kind of talked about but I would really start pumping out the fan-pleasing remasters. So I would get Ape Escape out. I would get Gravity Rush out. I would, I mean, it's what Nintendo did to prop up the Switch when it came out. Like, do that. Like, it works. They're practically new games for a lot of the audience you've built.
Yeah, especially for a lot of PS3 games, which there isn't really a very easy way to play a lot of those on modern hardware. Like, you could do, I think there's streaming options, but like if you can get, like, I don't know, the Ratchet and Clank Future trilogy onto PS5, or as an example, that could potentially be something that doesn't break the bank. You can get a separate team that's not like Insomniac to handle it, and bam, you have a fresh release of games that are over a decade old that could be very new to the audience who hasn't had a chance to play them. You know, that could be really good. You could do the same. Maybe do like the Infamous trilogy. Well, I know that one of them is a PS4 game, but like you could do like something like that. You know, bring some of those games forward in a way that wouldn't be too expensive. You could also just, you know, I know there's some PS1 and PS2 releases on the PlayStation Store. You can, if you want to make a quick buck, try working on that a little bit. I know PS2 emulation isn't in the best place on the PS5 if reports of Ape Escape 2's play isn't very good, and they've had to work out some kinks with the PlayStation 1 stuff, which I think they finally really got down. So try doing some of those, you know, get some people to come up with some trophies for that like they've been doing. And just start and maybe do the back catalog. At this point for this fiscal, you can't really make too many big decisions. You can maybe put certain things into development, try to start making some of those smaller games. But if the goal is to just make more money this year and just try to do some quick moves to complement some of these smaller scale releases, yeah, remasters, ports, you know, all of those things could help. And especially something like for the PS1 and PS2s on PlayStation Store might not be that high effort comparatively, so could be an easy source of revenue.
And put them on PC too, like that'll probably help fill those first two qualifications.
Oh yeah, that would definitely make a lot of money. Imagine official PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games just being straight up, Sony games just being straight up sold on PC.
Or put on PS Plus or PS Plus Essential or PS Plus Premium. I mean, PS Plus could PS Plus feels underutilized to me. I mean, obviously it can't be or might not be the next Game Pass, but Sony has a back catalog, like a pretty expensive back catalog
sure.
that is very appreciated and beloved in many ways. Like for example, like I remember when I had a PS3, I had Final Fantasy VI on my PS3, and I thought that was amazing that this was back in like 10 plus years ago, and obviously you can get the pixel remaster on PS5, but like working on some kind of solution to easily and accessibly get those kind of entries in the PlayStation back catalog that you can't get anywhere else. I know I'm being loud on the forums for a Parasite Eve re-release in one way or another, but that's one of many situations where, like, okay, there's some pretty small but extremely easy money to get to do that, take that one little step into expanding your subscription service to not exactly print money, but make a quick buck and to go to Meatbags, to Meatbags first bullet point that people would be really happy and could get loud on social media over classics being available on the PS5 all of a sudden.
So we're primarily a Nintendo podcast, and we've been talking quite a bit about PlayStation and Xbox because I think like there's a lot of stuff going on in the industry. We're kind of in our Nintendo boat, and we're like, oh, that's all unfortunate is like we wave gently, but we've got our Switch 2 coming this year, and life is good. And then more news breaks this week. that the Switch successor is likely pushed to early 2025, and everyone went wild. So I guess what was your initial reaction to hearing this?
Really gonna have to wait another year for my new 3D Mario game, huh?
So you're pretty of the opinion that 3D Mario is tied to the Switch launch or Switch successor launch?
Oh, absolutely. I think I'm not saying that's the reason why it's being delayed. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I for sure that's gonna be if not the launch title, it's definitely gonna be within the first year. 3D Mario has always been within that first year of any hardware that it's on. So obviously when you're waiting for that next big one, it's I got to wait just a little bit longer. But honestly, beyond that, I definitely want my shiny new toy sooner. Don't get me wrong. But I was kind of going into this year expecting this to be an October, November release anyway. So going from a November release to a March of next year release isn't that long. Just as a player, I have other things I can play and enjoy while I wait, so that doesn't personally bother me. But I get why people are sort of chomping at the bit because this has been a bit of a long generation.
Yeah, I think at this point I've developed enough of a back catalog that I'm just I've got things to play. As much as I want my shiny new toy, I'm not heartbroken that I don't have to pay for the shiny new toy this year. I'm honestly kind of mixed, but I'm not devastated by the news. It does make me think what could possibly be the holiday game of this year. It's probably Pokemon, but they've been teasing Black and White remakes pretty hard, I think.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I'm a little nervous about how that remake's gonna turn out after Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. So we'll see how that goes, because I love the 5th generation of Pokemon. It's one that's very near and dear to my heart. DS Pokemon in general is, and I'm not ready for Ilka to not be given enough development time to really push new ideas, and thus the game just ends up being kind of fine. I do think base Black and White is a much better individual package than base Diamond and Pearl, especially since Diamond and Pearl had Platinum versus Black White had just a straight up sequel, and so they have different vibes. So I don't think it would be as rough as going back as BDSP, but please, Pokemon Company, give them the time to work on this and nail it if this is what you're planning. Please.
One thing that comes to my mind, I mean, I'm in the same boat as WestEgg with, yes, I don't have to pay for my new toy for a year, and yes, my backlog is singing in joy. So because I have a lot of things to play in the meantime. But from the recent Direct, I got this little impression almost that Nintendo is a bit scraping at the bottom of the barrel in a little way, unless they have big surprises coming for us later on in the year, which they probably have, who knows. But, it's like you saw the latest Direct, it's okay, here's Luigi's Mansion 2 HD, which is a port or a remaster. Here's Thousand Year Door, which is a remake. Here's Mario vs. Donkey Kong, which is a remake, and so on. And you have Princess Peach Showtime, which looks really good, but it's not exactly a big busting AAA release in the same vein as Mario or Zelda or even a brand new 3D Donkey Kong or something like that. So the question that comes to my mind is that, are we going to ride that port/remaster/remake train all year, or does Switch have an additional little bit of powder left in it that will surprise us later on in the year? Or are we going to keep getting smaller tied releases to sort of like ride this wave out in a bit of a whimper until the successor comes and fires on all cylinders.
Yeah, that's definitely something I'm thinking about too. Because like when I assumed Switch 2 was coming 2024, like late 2024, I was kind of assuming that that is what they were going to do in general. Like, okay, we're gonna ride this out, but we're gonna have like a really good launch at the end of the year, and then we'll just have games throughout 2025. Now, if those games are not ready and they're gonna come out in March now, it's like I am sort of wondering, like, what is their plan for the holidays? Are we gonna get anything beyond like a lot of remakes? I feel like there's got to be at least like one or two like smaller scale titles that they're gonna do that are just gonna be straight up new besides Princess Peach Showtime. But I don't think it's gonna be Prime 4. I think they're gonna save that for cross-gen.
Yeah.
You know what would be absolutely wild? If instead of like even producing any new software, like aside from what we know about, this year they just bring back Nintendo Selects and have like all of their Switch back catalog, like first party, at $20, and just like that's their sales for the year. They just collect all of that.
Oh man, if they really, I mean, I wonder if they do that, because I don't know. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is still selling millions upon millions upon millions of units.
Oh, they wouldn't do it, but
I mean, I don't know. Maybe they can finally clear out some Sushi Striker Sushi Striker stock by selling that for $20.
Because that would just be like a wild way to like close out the Switch. Just like have a fire sale of all of the stuff. Which again, they especially won't do this, assuming the Switch successor is backwards compatible.
Yeah.
But oh man, I just had that thought, and I was just like, that would be so wild. I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
And I was also wondering that, or not wondering, but thinking in general that, to answer the question like directly, I do not mind. Also, I said two reasons. A third reason I don't really mind is that the whole discourse around the Switch successor has also been about being tired of Switch being basically a tablet from 2016, holding back on graphics. But what I've been wondering is there really any sort of like game in the pipeline, or game that we might not know and may or may not release on the current Switch, that is gonna suffer from a lack of graphical prowess? Because when I think about the really, really demanding games that might suffer from a lack of, that might be held back by Switch being a tablet from 2016, that would be a Zelda game, but we got Tears of the Kingdom, and Tears of the Kingdom is a humongous game that works bug-free. And yes, that has a bit of like jagged shadows here and there, but it released and it got a bit held back, but at the same time it was a very ambitious game that totally worked with the hardware. It makes me think that if 3D Mario is going to Switch 2, is Prime 4 is cross-gen, and it's like, what game is there left that might be held back by hardware that might be disappointing because of that?
Xenoblade Chronicles X. I don't know. I think that would look really good with the remaster. That might look good on next generation hardware, but that's all I can think of.
I don't know. Maybe a big Donkey Kong game or something. That fandom has been suffering for a decade, and I hope, for their sake, I hope they get something beyond the theme park, because the theme park looks really cool. But okay. I like to personally like joke about how Mario is doing way better than Donkey Kong, and you should be okay because Donkey Kong is just a Mario thrown off. But to be earnest for a moment, a decade's been a while. I hope we get a new Donkey Kong soon.
Yeah. All right. So there is most likely, as of the time of this recording, a partner direct coming that's been heavy in the rumor mill, probably within the next week. So just while we're still talking about Nintendo and what could be coming out this year, any quick hopes or predictions on what we might see?
I've heard from the rumor mill that we might get a shadow drop for Penny's Big Breakaway. If that's the case, then, well, 10 out of 10 partner direct. But I think the only thing other than that I'm really predicting is, I don't know, maybe the announcement of the Switch version of Trials of Mana, if that exists.
So, I've got a want that is probably... I'm probably the only one within this particular group that wants it. But on the day... Okay, so the rumor was the Partner Direct was supposed to happen on Thursday, which was the same day as the Microsoft podcast, whatever. And that Nintendo moved the the Partner Direct because they didn't want to overlap with that. They wanted the conversation to themselves for that day, which was probably unnecessary. But anyway, that same day, College Football 2025 was also announced, and my brain, which loves college football, was like, what if that was supposed to be in the Partner Direct and they had to just get it out there? And so yeah, I want that announced at the Partner Direct. I want it confirmed on Switch. I'll be playing regardless, but I want it on Switch, and I'm really hoping they announce it in that Direct.
Wouldn't be a bad idea. And speaking of which, if any of these 4 ports, like Hi-Fi Rush, Sea of Thieves, Print Inground, are coming to Switch, I can see one of them being announced at the partner.
Yeah, exactly.
Very easily.
I really want to see another small-scale, cool, surprising, exciting Square Enix project in the vein of Harvestella and Paranormal Sight. And thinking about those lines made me think about the next HD 2D game from Team Asano, because it has only been a year since Octopath Traveler 2, but it has been but it was only a year between Octopath Traveler 2 and Triangle Strategy, and I don't really know how their development pipeline works and stuff. But if we're talking hopes, that would be a really cool thing to see, whether it's Triangle Strategy 2 or something brand new entirely.
Yeah, actually, to circle back to Jiro's question from earlier, I totally forgot that we were getting an HD 2D Dragon Quest III remake.
Right.
So maybe we could get something on that. That would be great.
Yeah, that's a good call out, actually. I had something, but I lost it.
It's good.
This isn't necessarily what I want to see, but you'd mentioned Asano and the HD 2D stuff. I should have mentioned this at the top of the episode. I've been playing Live Alive as well, and I'm really enjoying it, so I just want to give that a shout. It's really good. You should play it if you're curious.
Yeah, we're looking forward to eventually busting it open and listening to that sweet, sweet Yoko Shimomura soundtrack.
It's good soundtrack, bite-sized little adventures that I'm starting to realize kind of what they have in common and stuff. It's pretty fun. It's a good time. Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the industry, where it's at, what the players are doing. So the big question: would you personally say 2024 is going to be seen as part of a video game crash, or maybe a period of stagnation, when people are looking back on it, or do you think people are kind of overreacting in the short term?
I have one big thing that has been on my mind for a very long time that has me a little bit concerned. And that is that everything is growing. And by that I mean that prices are going up, production values are going up, development costs are going up, file sizes are going up, but sales numbers on software is going up, and sales on consoles are starting to it feels like sales are not going up in the same way or same fashion as the other things I mentioned, as development costs and production values and file sizes and game prices. So all this escalation feels like it has a limitation where it's bound to shake up something, either shake up something or tip something over, because now we have 150 gigabytes, and then we're gonna have 200 gigabytes, and now we have $70, then we're gonna have $80, and then we're gonna have ultra realistic graphics, and then we're gonna have 200 million and 300 million and 400. And at some point, when are the consumers going to push back and say that this is too much money, this is too much, like we have way higher standards now because we want more and more better graphics, better production values, but we also don't want more expensive games. And it feels like almost like something is shaking, the glass is like rippling a little bit, and it just keeps make me come back to the idea and the thought that at some point some of these rising trends and rising things with game prices and stuff, they all have some kind of ceiling somewhere, and what is going to happen when one of these things hit a ceiling.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. Like with all of these things, honestly, I feel like the main thing I feel with this is that all of these things, not from both the player side and the buyer side and the developer side, a lot of them are connected issues. Games are getting more expensive. Hardware is getting more expensive. Workers aren't being treated well. Wages aren't going up in many parts of the world. And all of that, a lot of it is labor issues, labor and production and quality of life issues that exceed way beyond strictly video games. Like $70 games would not really be a problem if wages, for example, the United States, as sort of my reference point, if wages actually, and the minimum wage in particular, actually increased with the scale of inflation, then this wouldn't necessarily be a problem. But again, it is a labor issue, and it's been a labor issue, and it's a capital issue. I absolutely feel for all of the people in creative industries who are trying to deal with terrible bosses, or ways of the corporations trying to take a quick, try to skim a few bucks off the top by firing workers or forcing overtime and crunch, or getting generative AI to do specific art assets. I'm looking at you, Foam Stars album covers. So I think in general, I think in terms of games, the industry is not going to do very, very well in terms of the big stuff. The little stuff will still probably be pretty notable, but with Sony not doing too many big games, with Nintendo not releasing the new console, and whatever the heck's going on at Xbox, I think it's going to be a relatively slow year just from that. I think the industry is not going to strictly crash. It's not going to completely go away. There's still going to be plenty of games to play, but a lot of stuff that's going on, not just within games, but around the world. A lot of that stuff is bubbling to the top, and at some point, at least this is my hope, something has to give. Something has to give, and I hope we can I'm with the workers and with the people. I'm really hoping that we can just make better systems. And I don't mean game systems, I mean systems of the world. Please.
Yeah, I don't think that I don't think anyone can deny right now that the industry is at least in stagnation. Like, we've seen, we were talking about the PlayStation forecast cuts, Xbox is seeking new revenue sources, all of that. We had, obviously, the post-pandemic growth, which was huge, and then kind of let down when it turns out that's not going to last forever. But in general, I don't think any of the current systems, and the Switch 2 for that matter, will outsell their predecessors. I don't think there's going to be a growth on that front. I don't think that, maybe things are crashing, but it's at least stagnating. I don't think anyone can say it's not. I'm not qualified to really speak much more. It's probably something that we're currently in, and we need the outside view to really evaluate what is actually happening. But that's my perception right now. The industry's never gonna go away the way it did in the 1980s in North America. Like, you're not going to see Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo all simultaneously retreat from the console market and everyone lose interest in video games until something like breaks through and something new happens. Like, I don't think anyone is predicting that level of just industry Armageddon. But there's definitely going to be a pullback. You're right, it's unsustainable as is right now. Things need to become cheaper in some way or other, hopefully without using exploitive technologies, like, because the growth can't go on forever.
Yeah, it simply cannot. But that's still the mindset. Like, again, if you go back and listen to the Xbox podcast, a lot of that is the big problem that they're having, is that they're not reaching the growth that they want, that the industry is not growing. And a lot of that, maybe there are more sustainable ways to get that growth. Making more smaller scaled games rather than just pushing for the AAA stuff. Trying to not push the hardware processor and graphics arms race to sort of make bigger and bigger and bigger and better stuff. Something. I want games with worse graphics, etc., etc. But the endless pursuit of growth under the system of capitalism is simply not sustainable. And at some point, I hope it gives. Because it's, you can say growth all you want, but but you can't always get infinite growth. We see it in various big businesses going on. We see it with streaming, and we're seeing it with games. You can't grow forever. Infinite growth and steadily increasing profits year over year is not always going to be possible. What are you going to do about it?
We're gonna need the I want shorter games with worse graphics revolution to happen, where we rise up and say that this is what we really want and make the corporations listen to us.
I guess we'll see. So that'll do it for today's discussion. I'd like to thank my fellow discussion club members for their participation today, including those of you who sent us questions. If you're interested in continuing the discussion or sending us questions of your own, please be sure to find this podcast companion thread on Famiboards.com. And if you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to leave us a feedback or a like. We're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, or share this episode with someone you think might enjoy it. It would really help the podcast grow. So thanks again, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Take care, folks.